Okay, so welcome back to the deep dive. You guys have sent in some really fascinating stuff for us to dig into this time. Chapter 17 from Leading Without Praise, Built for Greatness, Built for God movement.
Okay.
And it's described as like a Christian edition of the Tao Te Ching.
Interesting.
So, I mean, right off the bat, that kind of suggests some pretty unique perspectives maybe on leadership.
Yeah. It really does. And I think what's especially interesting about this chapter is that it talks about this unique expression of God's love to restore the truth, is how it puts it, about leadership.
Okay.
We've also got some sections here on renewal through what they call the MAP framework, mindset, aim, practice.
Right.
And then there's a response section that actually draws some pretty thought-provoking parallels to teachings from various other religions.
Yeah. So for you listening, our goal in this deep dive is to sort of unpack these principles of leading without praise, leading without needing like all the applause. And seeing how these ideas, even though they're rooted in this like Christian viewpoint, might actually give you some fresh, maybe even surprising insights into like how influence actually works,
Right.
regardless of like what your background is or what you personally believe.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just jump into it.
Let's do it.
Right at the heart of the chapter, leading without praise, there's this line: when the King of Kings speaks, the people do not know he is among them.
Oh, wow.
What do you think? Like, what's the core idea that they're trying to get across with that image?
Well, I think what's really fascinating there is this idea that real leadership, really effective leadership, can be so integrated, that it almost goes unnoticed. It's not about being the loudest voice or the center of attention.
Yeah.
And they connect that right away in the chapter to the Gospel of John. The idea that Christ was in the world, but a lot of people just didn't recognize him. And so it kind of poses this model where real authority and guidance can be so transformative without needing constant validation.
Yeah.
The impact kind of speaks for itself.
It's like, the real power is in the results, not in like how much of a show you're putting on.
Right, exactly.
And then the chapter goes on to like contrast this idea with other types of leaders. It's almost like a ladder of leadership,
Yeah.
What are those other types, and what's important for us to understand about how they compare?
Yeah. So they kind of present this progression.
Okay.
The next best alternative, they say, is a leader who is recognized, someone whom people praise and love.
Okay.
They actually reference Jesus's entry into Jerusalem in John 12 there.
Interesting.
And it's interesting because while being loved and praised seems like a good thing, they seem to be subtly suggesting that even that wasn't really like the primary model that Jesus exemplified.
Yeah.
He wasn't seeking that adoration.
Right.
And then it moves down to an intimidating leader whom people fear. And that's linked to Matthew's account where Jesus criticizes some of the religious leaders in chapter 23.
Got it.
And then right at the bottom, you've got an incompetent leader whom people despise.
Right.
And they connect that to the Pharisees' spiritual blindness in John 9.
Okay. So it's like a spectrum.
It is.
And they seem to be really pointing us towards that quiet, impactful leader, the one that might even be like initially overlooked.
Right.
But that's the ideal.
Yeah.
So how do they actually describe the actions of this? Like ideal master leader, what sets them apart?
Yeah, the description is actually pretty brief.
Okay.
But it's really powerful. It says, the master proceeds calmly, fulfills his promise, and settles matters. And, that really evokes this image of Jesus's steady and purposeful actions throughout his ministry.
Yeah.
And, ultimately culminating in that declaration on the cross.
Yeah.
It is finished in John 19. And it speaks to this leadership style that's grounded in like deep reliability, the quiet but effective resolution of what really matters. There's this real sense of like unwavering commitment.
Yeah, it's interesting because the outcome of this approach, it says, then the people say, amazing, we did it naturally.
Yeah.
That's like a really understated reaction.
Right.
What's the significance of that?
I think that's where the truly empowering nature of this style really shines through. It's not about the leader taking all the credit or making people feel dependent. It's about cultivating this environment where people feel a genuine sense of ownership. Like they accomplished this. And they link this to John 8, where Jesus attributes all the glory to the Father.
Right.
Matthew 11, where he talks about his yoke being easy and his burden light.
Okay.
And it just reinforces that idea of leadership that actually lifts others up
Yeah.
and allows for organic growth and achievement.
Yeah, so it's about them realizing their own potential.
Exactly.
So in this leading without praise section, it seems like the big takeaway is a really strong encouragement to like embody Christ's humility, his trust, and that focus he had on really empowering other people, whether that's in, a formal ministry role in your family or like just in your wider community.
Yep.
Okay. Let's dig into the renewal section and this Trinitarian method, mindset, aim, practice, or MAP. How does this framework help us actually like put these leadership ideas into action?
Well, the MAP framework really gives us this practical structure for internalizing those principles.
Okay.
It suggests that true renewal in leadership comes from aligning our inner state, our mindset with our intentions or aim, and then consistently putting those into action through practice.
Right.
And all of this, chapter says, is shaped by God's love, trust in the Son, and faith in the Holy Spirit.
Right.
That's where the Trinitarian aspect comes in, connecting it back to Christian theology, but not in like an overly academic way.
Right.
Okay. Well, let's break down each part of MAP, starting with mindset.
Okay.
The first point is the invisible presence of leadership.
Yeah.
Which kind of brings us back to that very first thought in the chapter.
Right.
So what kind of like inner disposition are we being encouraged to develop here?
The key here is cultivating humility and a quiet kind of confidence.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that your effectiveness as a leader doesn't have to depend on like constant visibility or needing to be the center of attention. They actually reference Matthew 6 here, talking about giving in secret, suggesting that often the most impactful actions are those that are done without needing public recognition. So for you, this could mean like leading by your actions and letting your impact speak for itself rather than always needing external validation.
Yeah, that makes sense. The next mindset they talk about is the leader who is loved and respected.
Okay.
How do we foster that kind of inner state? So this shifts the focus to building trust and strong relationships. And that happens through integrity and genuine service to others.
Okay.
And there's a connection here to 1 Timothy 3, which outlines the qualities for church leaders.
Right.
And really emphasizes character. In your life, this could look like actively investing in your relationships, really listening to other people's perspectives, and consistently acting with honesty and care.
Yeah.
It's about building that foundation of trust.
Okay. So then we've got the fear-based leader.
Right.
And the mindset they suggest here is to actively reject fear as a motivator. Why is that so important in leadership?
Well, because leadership that's rooted in fear tends to create these unhealthy environments.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it erodes trust. They reference 2 Timothy 1 here, reminding us that we've been given a spirit of power, love, and self-control, not fear. So the practical takeaway is to choose to lead in a way that fosters safety and open communication, rather than using intimidation tactics or trying to control people.
Makes sense. Okay. The fourth mindset addresses the incompetent leader.
Okay.
And the advice here is to commit to ongoing growth and accountability. What does that look like in our day-to-day lives?
It's about embracing a continuous learning mindset, being humble.
Yeah.
They actually quote from James 1, where it encourages us to ask for wisdom.
Right.
So for you, this could mean actively seeking out opportunities to develop your skills, being open to feedback, even when it's tough, and maybe finding mentors who can offer you some guidance. Acknowledging that leadership is a journey, and you're constantly refining yourself.
Okay, and then finally, under mindset, there's calm and effective leadership.
Yeah.
How can we actually cultivate that kind of inner peace, that like really focused approach?
This one emphasizes trusting in the right timing. Focusing on steady, purposeful act, which kind of takes us back to that earlier point about the master seal on calmly. They connect this to Matthew 11, Jesus' invitation to find rest in him.
Okay.
And that suggests a leadership style that's not driven by anxiety or like this frantic energy,
Yeah.
So for you, this could involve practicing staying composed even in challenging situations and trusting that solutions will emerge, often by empowering others to step up and be a part of it.
Okay. That's a really solid look at mindset. Let's move on to aim.
Sure.
So how should our intentions shape our leadership according to this MAP framework?
Got it.
The first aim is invisible servant leadership. Again, kind of bringing us back to that core idea.
Right.
So like, what does that mean in terms of our intentions?
Well, the aim here is to intentionally lead without needing personal recognition. It's about focusing your intention on the impact you have on others rather than the accolades you receive.
Right.
They use that image from John 13 here where Jesus washes the disciples' feet. Powerful picture of leading through service. So for you, it's about making a conscious choice to serve and guide those around you without needing to be in the spotlight.
Okay.
Your intention really directs your actions.
Right. The second aim is love and respect in leadership.
Okay.
How do we direct our intentions towards that outcome?
This involves actively intending to lead with compassion, integrity, and genuine care for the well-being of others.
Okay.
And the link here to 1 Peter 5, which advises leaders to care for those they oversee willingly and not for selfish gain, really highlights that selfless intention. So in your interactions, this means prioritizing empathy and making decisions that benefit the group as a whole.
Yeah. Then we have the aim to overcome fear in leadership.
Right.
What should our intention be in that regard?
The intention here is to choose to lead with confidence and courage, rather than letting fear dictate your actions. And they reference 1 John 4 here, perfect love casts out fear, which really underscores this. So for you, this means intentionally creating an atmosphere of trust and what they call psychological safety.
Right.
Where fear doesn't stifle creativity or keep people from sharing their ideas.
So your intention is to act from a place of trust, not fear.
Exactly.
Okay. The fourth aim focuses on competence in leadership.
Right.
What should our intention be when it comes to our abilities and responsibilities?
So the aim here is to be intentional about developing the skills and wisdom you need to lead effectively.
Okay.
And to really embrace your responsibilities. Proverbs 4 comes up again. Get wisdom, get understanding.
Right.
It emphasizes the importance of actively pursuing knowledge and insight. So this could mean setting the intention to continuously learn, seek feedback, and just improve your capabilities in whatever role you're in.
Okay. And finally, under aim, we've got calm and natural leadership.
Yeah.
What should our intentions be regarding our demeanor and approach?
Well, the aim is to cultivate this calm and confident approach, allowing others to operate without feeling unnecessary pressure or anxiety.
Right.
And the reference to Philippians 4 about finding peace through prayer and not being anxious suggests an intention to approach challenges with a sense of composure.
Okay.
So, practically, this could mean aiming to maintain a steady presence and creating space for natural solutions to kind of emerge.
Yeah, I like that. So your intention sets the tone.
Exactly.
Okay, so that lays out the aim part pretty clearly. Let's move on to practice.
Let's do it.
How do we actually put these mindsets and aims into tangible action?
Right.
Day to day.
Yeah.
The first practice is servant leadership, which we've talked about quite a bit already.
Right.
What are some concrete things we can do to really embody this in our actions?
The key practice here is to actually actively look for opportunities to serve other people without expecting anything in return.
Right.
And they bring up Mark 10, where Jesus says, I came to serve, not to be served. That's the ultimate example. So, in your daily life, this could mean offering help to colleagues,
right?
Really listening to someone who needs to talk, and prioritizing the needs of those you lead, all without needing credit for it.
So it's about consistent, selfless action.
Exactly.
Okay. Second practice is leading with love and integrity.
Okay.
What are some tangible things we can do consistently with that one?
This practice is all about making honesty and respect the bedrock of everything you do.
Right.
They go back to 1 Timothy 3, talking about those qualities for leaders, emphasizing being above reproach. So practically, this means being transparent in how you communicate, acting ethically, even when it's hard,
right,
and consistently showing through your actions that you care for the people around you.
Okay. The third practice is leading without fear. Right. What does that actually look like, in how we act and behave?
Yeah. This one's about consciously choosing to act with courage and integrity, even when things are tough or uncertain. And 2 Timothy 1 is a good reminder here. It says that we have a spirit of power and love.
Yeah.
So in practice, this means confronting tough issues directly honestly.
Right.
Avoiding manipulation or threats, and creating an environment where people feel safe to take risks and share their ideas.
Okay, that makes sense. The fourth practice is competence and responsibility.
Uh-huh.
How do we make that a consistent part of our leadership?
This one's about taking concrete steps to actually improve your skills and your knowledge, in your area of responsibility. Proverbs 4 comes up again here. Seek wisdom.
Right.
So, practically this means seeking out training and development opportunities,
Yeah.
being proactive about asking for feedback,
Right.
and taking responsibility for your actions and your decisions.
It's a commitment to keep growing.
Exactly.
Okay. Finally, the fifth practice is calm and purposeful action.
Okay.
How do we cultivate that consistently in our leadership style?
So this practice is about taking a pause, assessing the situation with a calm mind,
Right.
and then acting thoughtfully rather than just reacting impulsively.
Yeah.
They reference Philippians 4 again, that reminder to not be anxious.
Okay.
So in your daily life, this could mean taking a moment before responding to a challenge,
Right.
trying to understand what's really causing the issue, and then guiding others with a sense of peace and clarity.
So allowing for well-considered solutions to emerge.
Exactly.
This MAP framework, it really does feel like a very practical roadmap for actually internalizing and living out these leading without praise principles.
Right.
Okay, now let's get into the respond section,
Okay.
which explores parallel teachings from a bunch of different religions.
Right.
The goal here is to sort of identify some shared truths about leadership. The first principle they highlight is servant leadership and humility.
Okay.
What kind of common threads do you see emerging across all these different faiths?
What's amazing is how universal this idea of selflessness in leadership really is.
Yeah.
So Christianity, as we've discussed, really centers on Jesus' example of servanthood.
Uh-huh.
But, in Islam, there's this huge emphasis on helping others and humility before God.
Okay.
Buddhism's concept of right action includes compassion and selfless service.
Interesting.
And Hinduism, to the Bhagavad Gita, talks about selfless action done without being attached to the results.
Right.
So the core principle is so clear. True leadership is about serving others, not elevating yourself.
Right. It's not about you.
Exactly. And Matthew 20.2628 actually puts it very plainly. Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant.
Okay. So the next parallel they draw is leading with love and integrity, which religions share that fundamental emphasis.
It's really striking how consistent this theme is, too.
Yeah.
So Christianity, with a central command to love your neighbor as yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Judaism, with its focus on love and justice in the Torah.
Right.
Islam, with its stress on fairness and compassion in the Quran.
Right.
And Sikhism, with its focus on selfless service and honest conduct. They all point to love and integrity as absolutely essential for leadership.
Wow.
And that beautiful description of love in 1 Corinthians 13, it really captures the essence of this across all those traditions.
It's powerful. The third parallel they identify is leading without fear.
Okay.
Which traditions speak to the importance of overcoming fear in a leadership role.
A lot of them highlight this idea of putting your trust in a higher power,
right,
or in your own inner wisdom rather than being driven by fear.
Uh-huh.
So Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, and Judaism all offer teachings that encourage us to overcome fear through faith, through mindfulness, or by sticking to strong ethical principles.
Right.
Isaiah 41 has that great line, "Do not fear, for I am with you."
Yeah.
It really resonates with this universal call to courage.
Okay. The fourth principle they talk about is competence and responsibility in leadership.
Uh-huh.
Are there similar ideas about the importance of having the skills and being accountable in other faiths?
Absolutely. This idea of responsible stewardship and the importance of developing your abilities, it's present across so many traditions.
Yeah.
So Christianity, with the parable of the talents, Islam, with its emphasis on fulfilling your role with excellence.
Right.
Hinduism's concept of dharma, which requires diligent action.
Okay.
And Buddhism's principles of right effort and right livelihood.
Yeah.
They all underscore the importance of being competent, and taking responsibility for your actions and the roles you have.
Wow. And finally, the last parallel they explore is calmness and patience in leadership.
Yeah.
Which religions emphasize those qualities.
Calmness and patience are seen as pretty crucial virtues for effective leadership across the board.
Uh-huh.
So Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, and Hinduism all stress how important it is to stay calm, especially when you're facing challenges.
Right.
And to trust in a larger process or even divine timing.
Yeah.
There's that teaching in Romans 12, be joyful in hope, patient in affliction.
Right.
That really reflects this widely held value.
It's really powerful to see how all of these core principles of what they call godly leadership have such strong echoes in so many different spiritual traditions.
Right.
The respond section even includes that quote from St. Thomas Aquinas, truth cannot contradict truth.
Yeah, it's a great quote.
It really highlights the idea that these fundamental principles of, ethical, effective leadership,
Right.
they aren't confined to any single belief system.
They're much deeper than that.
Yeah. They seem to tap into this deeper, more universal understanding of how to guide and influence people in a really positive way.
Right.
And, to foster greater understanding and respect.
Exactly.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, it's clear that leading without praise gives us some really profound insights into the nature of true leadership.
Yeah.
It's not about being in the spotlight
Right.
or using your power for personal gain.
Yeah.
It's about humility, service, and really empowering those around you to do their best.
I love that.
And as we've seen, these principles, they go way beyond just a specific religious context.
Right.
They offer a really valuable perspective on how you, listening right now, can actually exert influence in any area of your life.
Right.
At work, at home, in your community.
Right.
By, moving past that need for external validation and focusing on the impact you have.
I love that.
So for you listening, here's something to really think about.
Okay.
Think of a situation you're in right now in your life where intentionally applying this principle of leading without praise, focusing on being effective without needing the fanfare,
Right.
and empowering others to take ownership might actually create some really positive, maybe even surprising results.
Right.
What would that look like for you?
Yeah.
And what might you learn about your own ability to influence people that way?
Good question.
And we also really encourage you to keep thinking about these ideas.
Yeah.
And maybe consider how that shared wisdom that we've talked about, from all these different traditions can help you understand even more about what it means to be a really effective, ethical leader in all the different parts of your life.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.